I thought I was doing the right thing when I spent all my savings to buy my son-in-law a car. I believed it would bring happiness and respect to the family. But instead, what happened next broke my heart, and forced me to take shocking action that no one expected. I never thought the day would come when something I gave out of love would turn into the sharpest knife stabbed right into my back. My name is Eleanor, I'm 52 years old, and I've lived my whole life believing that family, no matter how flawed, deserves our trust. I was wrong. So terribly wrong. And the proof of it sits in my driveway. Or at least, it used to. Let me start from the beginning, before the storm tore through my home. I've always been the kind of woman who worked quietly behind the scenes. A librarian for nearly 3 decades, I never craved attention or luxury. My joys were simple, my daughter, Emily, and the thought that one day she'd build her own happy life. She was my pride, my reason to keep pushing through the gray monotony of days. And when she married a man named Daniel, I convinced myself he would be the strong, steady partner she deserved. Daniel was charming at first. Too charming, perhaps. He had this rehearsed politeness, the kind that makes you feel slightly uneasy, as though every smile is calculated. But Emily loved him. She glowed around him, and that glow blinded me to the cracks in his mask. He worked in sales, made good money, or so he boasted, and had grand dreams of climbing higher. The problem was, his dreams were always a little bigger than his reality. He wanted the best house, the newest gadgets, and of course, the flashiest cars. Cars. That was always his obsession. He spoke about them with a reverence he never showed to people. When his friends gathered, he would brag about horsepower and leather interiors like a preacher praising the gospel. And though Emily rolled her eyes, she indulged him, because love does that. Love blinds you. I should have trusted my instincts the day he first brought up the subject of buying a new car. We were sitting at the dinner table, the 4 of us, Emily, Daniel, myself, and my sister who had come to visit. Daniel leaned back, glass of wine in hand, and said almost casually, "You know, Eleanor, with all the money you've saved over the years, you could do something special for your family. Like helping us get a proper car. Emily deserves it, don't you think?" I laughed nervously, brushing it off. But inside, something twisted. Was he asking me to buy them a car? At first, I thought I misunderstood. Who asks their mother-in-law for something so outrageous? But no, his eyes held that sly gleam, daring me to deny him. And Emily, bless her heart, looked down at her plate, embarrassed. For days, his words lingered like smoke in my home. He never mentioned it again directly, but his subtle hints piled up. If only we had a reliable vehicle, we could visit you more often. Or imagine how safe Emily would feel driving the newest model. Each remark was a needle pricking my conscience. Until finally, against every ounce of reason, I broke. I had the savings. Years of careful living, pinching pennies, avoiding luxuries for myself. I told myself it was for emergencies, or perhaps one day for my retirement. But when I saw Emily's tired face after work, heard Daniel's constant sighs about their old car, something in me caved. Maybe this would be my way of helping my daughter. Maybe this would keep their marriage steady, keep her happy. So I did it. I walked into a dealership, heart pounding, and I signed the papers for a sleek black sedan, Daniel's dream car. My hands trembled as I handed over the check. I wasn't just buying metal and wheels, I was buying peace, or so I thought. The day I presented it to them, Daniel's grin stretched so wide I thought his face might split. He wrapped an arm around me, kissed my cheek, and declared, "You're the best mother-in-law in the world." Emily hugged me tightly, whispering, "Mom, you didn't have to." But she was smiling, and for a fleeting moment, I felt warm. I thought I had done something good. For a week or two, the house was lighter. Daniel paraded the car around town, posting photos, boasting to anyone who would listen. Emily seemed calmer, more secure. And I allowed myself to feel proud. But then came the night that shattered it all. It was late, a chilly evening, and I stopped by their house with a basket of groceries. The car sat in the driveway, glistening under the street lamp. I couldn't help myself. I ran my hand along the hood, just a gentle caress, the way one might admire a piece of art they had purchased. That's when Daniel's voice cut through the night, sharp as broken glass. "Don't touch it." I froze, my hand hovering midair. He stood at the door, arms crossed, eyes cold. "What?" I stammered, trying to laugh it off. "Daniel, I bought the car. I was just—" "I don't care," he snapped. "This is mine. You don't get to lay a finger on it. Ever." The words hit me like a slap. Mine. As if my sacrifice meant nothing. As if I had handed him a crown and he had decided I was unworthy even to look at it. Emily stood behind him, silent, her face pale. She didn't defend me. She didn't say a word. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, my chest burning with humiliation and rage. I had given him everything he wanted, and in return, he stripped me of dignity. It wasn't just about the car. It was about respect. About gratitude. About the twisted power he held over my daughter, and now, over me. And that was the moment something inside me cracked. Because if he thought he could forbid me from touching what I had bought with my blood and sweat, he was sorely mistaken. The next morning, before the sun even rose, I dressed quietly, slipped into my coat, and drove straight to their house. The street was silent, the car gleaming like a prize waiting for its rightful owner. My hands no longer trembled. My breath was steady. And without a second thought, I opened the door, slid into the driver's seat, and turned the key. The engine purred like a beast under my command. And as I pulled out of the driveway, my lips curled into a smile sharper than any blade. If Daniel wanted a war, he had just declared it. The sound of that engine still echoed in my ears as I drove away from their house, the sky barely beginning to lighten with streaks of gray. My heart pounded, but not from fear. It was something else, an intoxicating rush, like tasting freedom after years of swallowing ashes. I told myself it wasn't theft. How could it be? The papers bore my signature. My money had bought every bolt and every inch of leather. If anything, I was simply reclaiming what was mine. But as the tires ate the miles of cold pavement, I knew this wasn't the end. Daniel wouldn't let it go quietly. Men like him never did. They thrived on control, on dominance, on making others feel small. And I had just ripped that illusion from his hands. When Emily called later that morning, her voice was trembling. "Mom. Did you take the car?" I swallowed hard, trying to keep my tone calm. "Yes, Emily. I bought it, remember? He said I wasn't allowed to touch it. So I drove it away." There was silence on the line, broken only by her uneven breathing. Then, quietly, "Daniel is furious. He says you disrespected him in his own home." Disrespected him. The words made my stomach twist. "Emily, do you hear yourself? I spent my life savings on that car, for you, for your safety, for your comfort. And he treats me like a beggar daring to steal crumbs from his table. Where is his respect for me?" She didn't answer. Or maybe she couldn't. I imagined her standing in their kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, Daniel looming behind her like a shadow, feeding her the lines she repeated to me. My daughter, my precious girl, caught between loyalty to her husband and love for her mother. And I knew which side Daniel would force her to choose. That evening, he arrived at my house. No warning, no call, just the violent slam of his fist on my front door. When I opened it, he barged in without waiting. His eyes burned with a fury that made my skin crawl. "Where is it?" he demanded, spittle flying with each word. "Where's my car?" I stared at him, refusing to flinch. "It's not your car, Daniel. It never was. I paid for it. I signed the papers. If you think otherwise, you're delusional." He let out a low, humorless laugh. "Do you really think people are going to see it that way? Everyone knows you gave it to us. To Emily and me. Gifts don't come with strings, Eleanor." His voice dripped with venom as he stepped closer. "You're pathetic. You couldn't stand seeing me drive something better than your rusty old junk, so you snatched it back like a spoiled child." My hands clenched into fists at my sides, nails digging into my palms. Part of me wanted to scream, to slap that smug expression off his face. But another part of me, colder, sharper, knew that losing control would only give him power. "Get out of my house," I whispered. For a moment, I thought he might strike me. His face contorted, red and trembling with rage. But instead, he sneered, turned on his heel, and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. The war had begun. In the days that followed, Daniel's tactics grew more insidious. It started with whispers. Mutual friends calling me, confused, asking why I had humiliated him. Stories spread that I was unwell, that I was senile, that I was clinging to control over Emily's life. Daniel painted me as a bitter old woman desperate for attention. At the grocery store, neighbors avoided my eyes. At church, the whispers followed me down the pews. Even my sister called, her voice cautious, "Eleanor, maybe you should just give it back. Keep the peace. It's just a car." Just a car. They didn't understand. It wasn't about the metal or the leather seats. It was about dignity, about refusing to be erased from my own daughter's life. But Daniel wasn't finished. One night, I came home to find my mailbox ripped open, letters scattered across the lawn. A week later, the tires of my old sedan were slashed, rubber shredded like paper. I knew it was him, though I had no proof. And when I told Emily, her response shattered me more than the vandalism itself. "Mom. Maybe you should stop provoking him. Maybe if you just apologize, he'll calm down." Apologize? To the man who had twisted every sacrifice I'd made into an insult. To the man who poisoned her against me, drop by drop. My voice broke as I said, "Emily, can't you see what he's doing? He's isolating you. He's controlling you." But she hung up before I could finish. The cracks in my heart widened with each passing day. Sleep eluded me. Food turned to ash in my mouth. I caught myself staring at the car in my driveway, its polished frame mocking me, a symbol of the chasm Daniel had driven between me and my daughter. Yet even in the darkest nights, a small ember of defiance glowed inside me. Because I began to notice something Daniel hadn't accounted for. In his arrogance, he had slipped. He'd left traces. A mechanic who mentioned Daniel had bragged about his car weeks before the purchase. A bank teller who raised an eyebrow when I explained why such a large sum was withdrawn. A neighbor who saw Daniel screaming in the driveway the night I took the car. Little fragments, scattered like breadcrumbs. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a shift. A tiny, dangerous spark of hope. Because maybe, just maybe, Daniel wasn't as untouchable as he thought. The spark of hope I clung to was fragile, like a match flickering in a storm. And Daniel was the storm itself. He wasn't content with turning neighbors against me, or slashing my tires in the dark. He wanted to ruin me completely, grind my name into the dirt until even Emily would recoil at the sound of mother. It happened one Thursday morning. I was at the library, shelving books, trying desperately to keep my mind off the chaos that had swallowed my home. My phone buzzed. Dozens of messages. Missed calls. Whispers turned into shouts. By the time I checked, my blood ran cold. On Facebook, there it was, a post from Daniel, smug smile plastered across his face, standing beside the car I had bought. Except in his story, it wasn't my car. It was a gift he claimed I had stolen back out of spite. The caption read, "When your crazy mother-in-law can't stand to see you successful, she literally steals your car. Pray for us." Attached was a photo of me, grainy but clear enough, taken from across the street the morning I drove it away. My coat, my hands on the wheel, my face twisted in concentration. A thief. That's what he wanted me to look like. The comments poured in like acid. "Wow, that's insane. Who does that?" Poor Emily, stuck between them. She should be in a home if she's acting like this. I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred. He had turned me into a public spectacle, a mad woman to be pitied or mocked. My phone buzzed again. Emily. Her voice was sharp, panicked. "Mom. Why would you let him post that? Why would you give him more ammunition?" My throat tightened. "Emily, don't you see? He set this up. He's making me the villain." But she only sighed, weary, as though I had become the burden. "I can't do this anymore. Daniel says maybe we need distance. Maybe. Maybe you shouldn't come around for a while." Distance. The word sliced me open. My daughter, the one I raised alone after her father's death, the one I sacrificed everything for, was pushing me out of her life. Not because she wanted to, but because he had poisoned her so completely she couldn't see the chains he was tightening around her. That night, the weight of it all crushed me. I sat in the dark living room, clutching an old photo of Emily as a child, her gap-toothed smile, her arms wrapped around me. My tears fell hot and fast. How had it come to this? How had my act of love turned me into a monster in her eyes? But Daniel wasn't done. He wanted me broken. 2 days later, I received a letter in the mail. At first glance, it looked official, the type that makes your stomach drop before you even open it. Inside was a legal notice. Daniel was threatening to sue me for theft. Theft of the car. He claimed it was marital property, that I had no right to take it once given. And the signature at the bottom, his lawyers, made my knees buckle. The audacity. The sheer cruelty. He was trying to drag me into court, to stain my record, to brand me not only as unstable but as a criminal. I wanted to scream. To tear the letter into shreds and set it on fire. But my hands shook so violently I could barely hold it. My chest heaved, and I collapsed into a chair, gasping for air. He was winning. He was taking everything from me, my reputation, my daughter, my peace of mind. For the first time in years, I felt utterly powerless. Days blurred together after that. I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. Every sound outside my house made me jump, convinced Daniel had come to finish what he started. My reflection in the mirror became a stranger, hollow eyes, pale skin, lips pressed into a thin line of despair. And still, Emily didn't call. But then, just when I was sinking into the deepest pit, I noticed something. A detail, almost insignificant, but it glimmered like a thread of light in endless dark. I was reviewing the so-called legal letter again, tracing every word, every line, when I spotted it, the date. Wrong. Sloppy. The lawyer's letterhead was printed, yes, but the date of filing didn't match the court's calendar. And then, the signature. Smudged. Off-center. Not quite right. It wasn't official. It wasn't filed. It was a bluff. Daniel hadn't dragged me to court yet. He wanted me to believe he had. He wanted me to crumble under fear, to beg him for mercy before the battle even began. My hands stilled. My breath slowed. The despair in my chest twisted, hardened, transformed into something else. Rage. Pure, white-hot rage. Because if Daniel thought I would fold, he underestimated me. He thought the years of quiet living had made me soft, weak. But what he forgot was this: I had raised a child alone, fought through loneliness and grief, built a life brick by fragile brick. I wasn't weak. I had only been patient. And now, patience was over. I folded the letter neatly, slid it back into its envelope, and placed it on my desk. For the first time in weeks, I slept without waking in terror. Because I knew what Daniel didn't, he had made a mistake. A careless one. And that mistake would be his undoing. The morning I realized that letter was nothing but a bluff, something inside me shifted forever. I was no longer the humiliated woman begging for scraps of dignity. No. Daniel had turned me into something sharper, something he never saw coming. I decided I wouldn't fight him on his terms. No screaming matches. No hollow threats. If he wanted war, I would give him silence, silence filled with traps. The first step was simple: information. I retraced everything connected to the car. I pulled up the paperwork, the bank withdrawals, the dealership receipts. Each document bore my name, my signature, my account details. Solid proof. Daniel could twist words, but paper didn't lie. Then I went digging deeper. I paid a visit to the dealership, a small place on the edge of town where the manager, a balding man with kind eyes, remembered me well. "Yes, ma'am," he confirmed, flipping through files. "That vehicle was purchased solely under your name. No co-signers, no joint ownership." He even printed me copies, stamped with the dealership seal. My heart thrummed with satisfaction, but that wasn't all. The manager chuckled, almost sheepishly. "Funny thing. That young man, Daniel, was it? He came in here a week before you bought it. Tried to finance it under his own credit. Got denied." Denied. The word was music to my ears. So, he hadn't just manipulated me into buying the car. He had needed me too. His grand facade of success was cracked wide open, and all I had to do was shine a light through it. I spent the next few days quietly building my arsenal. Screenshots of his Facebook slander. Witness statements from neighbors who saw him vandalize my mailbox. A mechanic's note confirming Daniel had boasted about his car before I purchased it. Every piece was another brick in the wall I was stacking against him. And then came the opportunity I had been waiting for. Emily called. Her voice was small, tentative. "Mom. Daniel wants to have dinner. With you. To clear the air." Clear the air. I nearly laughed out loud. But instead, I agreed, my tone sweet as honey. "Of course, darling. Let's all sit down." I spent the hours before dinner preparing. Not food, evidence. I packed a neat folder, labeled and ordered, each page ready to cut him down like a guillotine. My hands didn't tremble as I slid it into my bag. The dinner was at their house. Emily greeted me with forced brightness, eyes darting nervously toward the kitchen where Daniel stood, arms crossed, smirk plastered on his face. The air was thick, heavy, suffocating with tension. We sat. Emily tried to smooth things over, her voice shaky, but Daniel wasted no time. "Eleanor," he began, his tone dripping with false civility, "I think it's best for everyone if you admit you overstepped. Give the car back, apologize publicly, and we can move forward." His arrogance was suffocating. I leaned back, letting him bask in his imagined authority. Then, slowly, I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. "Daniel," I said softly, "you should be careful what you ask for." I opened the folder and slid the first set of documents across the table. The dealership receipt. My name, bold and undeniable. His smirk faltered. Next, the financing denial from his previous application. His face twitched. Then, the mechanic's note. The neighbor's statement. Screenshots of his slander. One by one, I laid them out like daggers, each one slicing deeper into his facade. Emily's eyes widened, darting from page to page, her face draining of color. "Daniel. What is this?" she whispered. He stammered, his mask cracking. This doesn't mean anything. She's twisting it. She. I cut him off, my voice sharp as glass. "No, Daniel. You twisted it. You lied, you smeared my name, you tried to make me a criminal. And you failed." For the first time, his bravado slipped entirely. He looked cornered, desperate, a predator exposed. Emily's voice shook. "You told me Mom was unstable. You told me she tried to steal from us. You said she was dangerous." Silence hung like a blade. I leaned forward, my eyes locked on his. "You thought you buried me, Daniel. But all you did was hand me the shovel." The words landed like thunder. Emily pushed back from the table, her chair scraping against the floor. Her hands shook as she pointed at him. "Is it true? All of this?" Daniel sputtered, his face blotchy with rage, but no words came. He had no defense. I stood, gathering the papers back into my folder with deliberate calm. "I suggest you think carefully about your next move. Because the next time you try to slander me, these documents go straight to the police, and to every person you've lied to." The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Daniel sat there, fists clenched, his pride bleeding out of him. Emily's eyes filled with tears, betrayal etched across her face. I walked to the door, my steps steady, my back straight. As I reached for the handle, I turned one last time. "Enjoy your dinner, Daniel. It's the last time you'll ever have the upper hand." And with that, I left. The night air was cold, crisp, alive with the electricity of victory. For the first time in weeks, the weight on my chest lifted. He was finished. The days after that dinner felt different. The air itself seemed lighter, the silence no longer suffocating but peaceful. For the first time in months, I woke without a knot of dread tightening in my chest. Daniel tried, of course. A man like him never surrenders gracefully. He called Emily incessantly, spinning new stories, new justifications. He painted me as a manipulative witch, a master liar who had framed him. But the seed of doubt had already sprouted in Emily's mind, and doubt is the one thing a narcissist cannot recover from. She began visiting me, cautiously at first. Each time, she'd ask questions, quiet, searching. I answered patiently, never pushing, never forcing. I let the evidence, and his unraveling behavior, speak louder than my words. Slowly, her eyes cleared. She saw through him. One afternoon, weeks later, she broke down on my sofa, her face buried in her hands. "I don't know how I believed him, Mom. He made me hate you. He made me think you were crazy." I held her, my heart aching with both sorrow and relief. "Sweetheart, people like him are experts at weaving illusions. Don't blame yourself. You're not weak, you just loved the wrong person." Her tears soaked my blouse, but for the first time, I felt hope. Not the desperate, clawing hope that had tormented me when I was cut off from her, but a quiet, steady hope. The kind that grows roots. As for Daniel, the walls closed in on him quickly. His reputation, once puffed up with arrogance, began to crumble. Friends distanced themselves. The dealership story circulated. Employers looked less kindly on a man whose lies had been dragged into daylight. And me? I didn't need revenge anymore. I already had it. Watching him unravel under the weight of his own lies was more satisfying than any punishment I could have orchestrated. He had tried to paint me as unstable, but in the end, it was his mask that cracked, exposing the hollow man beneath. Still, victory wasn't without scars. Trust had been broken. My bond with Emily, though healing, would never be as naive, as unquestioning, as it once was. A mother-daughter connection had been tested by fire. It would take time, effort, forgiveness. But now, at least, we were walking that path together. Looking back, I realized something chilling. Daniel hadn't destroyed me. He had revealed me. I had always been strong, but quietly so, bending to keep peace, yielding to protect harmony. I had mistaken silence for weakness, patience for fragility. But in the face of his lies, I discovered a sharper edge within myself. An unwillingness to be erased. And that was the greatest lesson of all. People like Daniel thrive in shadows. They twist truth when no one is watching, they rewrite stories when no one dares to challenge them. But the moment you drag them into the light, the moment you strip away the illusions, they crumble. Not because you're stronger than them, but because their power was never real to begin with. It was borrowed, stolen, fed by fear and silence. I thought back to the beginning, when I first saw him smiling at my daughter, hand resting a little too tightly on her back. I had ignored my instincts, dismissed my unease as paranoia. Don't be the overbearing mother, I told myself. Trust her judgment. But instincts are rarely wrong. And if I had one piece of advice to leave behind, it would be this: when your gut screams, listen. Even if it costs you comfort. Even if it costs you peace. Because ignoring that whisper can cost you far more. Daniel came into my life as a thief, stealing trust, love, even the bond between mother and daughter. But he left as nothing. Stripped bare. Exposed. As for me, I didn't just reclaim what was mine, the car, my dignity, my voice. I reclaimed myself. The Eleanor who walked out of that dinner wasn't the same woman who had walked in weeks earlier, broken and humiliated. She was sharper, steadier, and unafraid. So no, I didn't forgive him. Some betrayals don't deserve forgiveness. But I did thank him, in a twisted way, for forcing me to face the steel inside me. Because in the end, he didn't bury me. He built me.